Hey ladies, I'm really excited to talk about this video today. I think it's gonna be my most favorite video I've made so far, and it's something that was really helpful for me, and it's all about healing your shame, especially and specifically in this video, shame that comes from a prior relationship or a breakup or a toxic partner. So I want to start off with discussing what shame is. Shame is an emotion or feeling that we experience when we believe that we are unworthy of love, unworthy of a person. A lot of people will confuse shame and versus guilt. Guilt is when we know or we can acknowledge that we did something bad and we feel guilty for it, right? It's about the action at hand. Whereas shame has to do with who we are as a person. It's more about our character, and we are shameful people. Like, we feel that we are undeserving, we feel we are a bad person. So guilt is I did something bad, shame is I am bad. So some good examples specifically for relationships. So guilt, someone might say screaming during our argument made me feel very guilty about hurting you. Whereas shame, it would be saying I feel ashamed for staying in such a toxic relationship for so long. The shame comes from you saying, I'm ashamed of who that person was. You're ashamed of the person that you are or you were if you have healed from that past relationship. Guilt comes from the fear of harming someone or doing something bad towards them, whereas shame, it comes from self-judgment. It's when you are being critical of yourself. You can feel shame and guilt, right? You can be guilty of doing something to someone, but you are carrying that guilt and you are turning it, that mistake that you made, into shame by saying like, me doing that means I'm a bad person. So why we have shame? So shame is a survival response, and it's going to stem from past trauma. Majority of the time it's from your childhood. So for me, when I was younger and I was in different relationships and things like that, I have and bear a lot of relationship trauma. A lot of the times the feeling of shame would come up as we evolutionized to basically look after our morals and our right versus wrong, and to protect others and to protect ourselves. The shame, in hindsight, could be good, but it's when you start to tie a lot of the emotion to it and you start to tie your worth to shame is where there's the issue. Think of something super embarrassing you did, or something you're truly shameful for. Sometimes it's not embarrassing. Sometimes it's it could be shocking. You knew you traumatized someone else, or someone traumatized you. Think of that thing. Really recognize how your body feels when you feel that. That is basically your brain going off and saying, like, it's basically protecting you from making that mistake again. Because that feeling of shame comes up, and it's to tell you, hey, like, this was something bad, this was something traumatizing that happened. I'm trying to protect you from this thing by putting that feeling in your body. We can recognize that shame is meant to be there to kind of protect us and to guide us in the things that we want to do. But it becomes a problem when we tie ourselves to that feeling of shame, and we tie ourselves and make the mistakes that we made our whole personality, or we believe that whatever incident that caused that shame defines us. So how shame can look in relationships and breakups? Usually you'll feel shame if you were either in a toxic relationship and you were the toxic partner, you mistreated someone, or you can feel shame if you were in something toxic and your partner was the one that was hurting you and traumatizing you, and you decided to stay for however long, or you tried to make it work, things like that. Sometimes you can be both of those people. It doesn't have to be you're one or the other. A lot of the times in relationships, both people are toxic, both people are trying to constantly make it work, but they haven't actually done their inner work and reflected onto why this is happening in the relationship. So a lot of the times when we are in a relationship that's toxic, or we went through a breakup from a relationship that's toxic, it can lead you to feeling unworthy, unlovable. It could lead you to believe that you're a damaged person. Whether you were the toxic one, whether your partner was, whether you both were, you could start to feel that you're an unhealed, damaged individual, and the shame carrying from that relationship will come and manifest into other relationships and within your own life. And a lot of the times, especially in relationships, shame stems from perfectionism. You want to be in a relationship and you want to do everything perfectly. You want to treat each other perfectly. You never want to mess up because the last thing you want to do is hurt someone. So you were striving for a perfect relationship where everything goes smoothly and everyone's happy. And the reason that we do that is to avoid the feeling of shame, right? If you do everything perfectly, then you're not going to feel shameful. You're going to feel happy. You're going to feel like you are worthy and you are lovable and things like that. But when you mess up, that's when the feeling of unworthiness of your partner, or you're unworthy of love, is when that's going to rise up for you. I've had a lot of relationship trauma, like I said before, and for me, the feeling of shame is very, very prominent all the time. It's very hard for me when I'm with my husband and I do something that, could trigger him or make him a little upset or something that he doesn't like. I start to freak out a little bit because I have been in so many toxic relationships, and I found one that's finally so fulfilling and one that's so loving and the best relationship I've ever had in my life. And when I do something that potentially hurts him, I start to feel mass amounts of shame. I start to think of all the people that hurt me and how I am taking that hurt, and what if I'm putting it onto him? What if I learned this toxic pattern from this past relationship and now I'm gonna bring it into our marriage? And then I'll start to feel unworthy of love. I'll start to feel like, I don't deserve him and I'm not perfect enough for him, or all I do is hurt him. And I start to get into kind of this mindset. Sometimes I do kind of fall back into that pattern of like, I hurt him and I'm undeserving of being, in a happy marriage, or I'm undeserving of having someone like him who is so understanding and kind and caring and loving. So I have 3 steps to help you move past shame from a past breakup or a relationship. If you are still holding on to, whether it be the feelings of guilt that manifest into shame, whether you are disappointed in yourself or embarrassed for how you may have acted in those prior relationships, I have 3 steps for you guys that have helped me a lot. The first one is to own all your mistakes. We are not perfect. Every relationship you go into, everyone is gonna mess up no matter what. So you have to look at your mistakes and acknowledge them, own them, and say, yes, I did that. And remember that it always takes 2 in a relationship. So it's possible that you were the toxic one, it's possible that your partner was the toxic one, and you wanted to stay and consistently fix the relationship. Or you could have been both. You both could have been the toxic ones in that relationship, because you're trying your best to survive in an environment that you could have been unfamiliar with, or maybe all you know is toxic relationships. And whenever we repeat toxic patterns, it's because that's what we're used to. That's what our body, that we're trained to feel safe in. That's what our body is always wired to do when you're constantly in toxic patterns. When you look back at your past mistakes, you have to realize that they're always going to be there, and you can't move back and you can't change them. And now the only thing you can do is move forward, and you can't allow those past mistakes to actually define you and define who you are as a person. Because if you try to move forward and you keep criticizing yourself and you keep bashing on yourself and saying, I should have done this, I should have done this differently, I wish I never did this, I'm not worthy of being with this person that I'm with now, you're going to always be criticizing yourself, and you're not going to be able to actually move past that situation. You're going to be stuck in the past, and that doesn't help because you can't change it. So now you're going to be stuck there forever. And you have to give yourself some grace and give yourself some humanity and kind of recognize, like, what happened with me, millions of other people it's happened to as well. There's millions of other people who have been in toxic relationships, who have been the toxic one, who have stayed consistently with people that did not treat them right, or were the ones that didn't treat someone right. Millions and millions of people have this experience. You are not the only one. So that's why you have to give yourself some humanity and realize, okay, like, I made a mistake that so many other people make all the time. That doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. So my second step is to gather your emotions. So we were able to own our mistakes, but it's important that we gather our emotions and we don't allow our mistakes to own us or define us or overrule our entire lives. You have to understand that you are not the choices that you made. That it does not make up the person that you are. Moments in your life don't make up your personality or your soul or who you are as a being. It doesn't define your character. So if you let your emotions take over for what you did or what happened in your past relationships, you're going to be digging a ditch, digging your own grave, and you're going to lie in it. And you're constantly going to be thinking of those mistakes, owning them, but you're going to tie your emotion into those mistakes, and you're going to lay in your ditch and you're going to die in it because you can't let go and understand what you're feeling. And a lot of the times when we feel shame, we'll throw excuses out for our behavior, like, oh, he would say this to me, or, you know, she would sometimes treat me like this, or he said, she said, things like that. We would throw out so many excuses as to why we stayed, or why we left, or why we were treated this way, or why we treated someone else this way. And it's filled with I should have, I could have, I would have. But that does nothing, because again, you can't go back and change the past. Your should have, your would haves, your could haves don't do anything for you now, right now. So of course, it's always important to acknowledge our emotions and allow ourselves to feel them. You don't want to stuff them down. You don't want to stuff them down because it'll be that much harder to heal later on when all those emotions come back up. You want to feel them now, but what you have to remember is you need to reflect on them. You need to reflect on your mistakes and your emotions, reflect and understand what happened. My last step for you guys is 3, which is forgiveness. So forgive yourself for not knowing what you know now in the past. You have to forgive yourself and understand that it's okay that you did not have the tools that you have now to go through that other situation. A lot of the times we sit in our present self and we're like, why, again, the should have, the could haves, and the would haves. Why didn't I do this? I should have said that. I could have made this better. I would have done this differently if I could go back. You're saying all these things when all you can ever do is just forgive yourself for not knowing in that past version of you, that unhealed version of you that was in that toxic situation. And you can also leave room to appreciate who you are now and appreciate, okay, I learned from this and now I know I won't ever do it again. Forgive yourself for your past actions by realizing you were just doing what you needed to survive most of the time. It's also important to recognize that just because you're forgiving yourself, it doesn't mean that you're trying to wipe away everything that ever happened. It doesn't mean that what you did was okay. You can acknowledge that whatever you did that makes you feel shameful was not okay towards the other person, or it wasn't okay towards you or someone else, but that doesn't mean that you are just disregarding it and you're ignoring it. By you acknowledging your mistake and what you did and forgiving yourself, you're allowing yourself to heal and grow as an individual. This is going to be the hardest part, I feel like, in any breakup, in any relationship. You have to forgive the other person. And for me, this has always been the biggest struggle. I still struggle with forgiving others. You know, I'm able to give myself grace and I'm able to see, you know, what I did wrong. I've always been very self-aware. I'm able to see what I did wrong and what I could have done better. And I can see what they did wrong and how I responded to, excuse me, those things. But trying to forgive the other person, especially when you are the one that's hurting, when you are the one that got the brunt of it, that is probably the hardest thing that you're gonna have to try and do. And the only real path or step that I can give someone who is avidly working to forgive their ex is you need to recognize and hope that they can learn from their past mistakes and they're on their way to healing and becoming a better person. Instead of holding on to resentment, instead of holding on to that shame, you just have to kind of take yourself out of that emotional state, detach from the situation, and think, I hope that they've learned as much as I have and they've healed just like I'm doing. You don't want to seek for someone else's forgiveness or their validation or their approval. If you do that, you're going to continuously live for other people. And that's when the perfectionism starts to come in, and you're going to allow people to walk all over you because you want that validation, and people will start to take advantage of you. When you do wrong by someone who is seeking, or if you're seeking for their forgiveness, they can take advantage of you and they can tell you, do this for me, do that for me. It'll constantly be like you want a hamster wheel trying to earn their forgiveness, and they're just kind of, you're just benefiting them instead of doing it for yourself and forgiving yourself. Don't give your power to others by seeking for their validation. The power in your own life is in your hands, and you can choose to heal. You can choose your path to healing. You can unlearn shame. You can unlearn toxic past patterns that you've had in relationships and breakups, and you can heal from them. And all you can do is hope that the other person heals from that too and understands where they went wrong as well. But you can't force them, and they can't force you. Only you can want to change. Only that other person can really want to change and fix themselves. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was really fun to make. It was really deep, especially I feel like not many talk about shame, specifically in relationships. I think it's so important, especially for people like me who have a lot of relationship trauma and have been through the ringer and that type of thing. So I really hope you ladies enjoyed, and I'll be back next week for another video. Bye.